Welcome everybody, it's me, Daryl, your friendly neighborhood yard farmer. And I have these 3 just useless containers that have been hanging out, so I thought I would turn them into a really quick native plant pollinator garden that can kind of provide some color and interest for this corner of my patio. I have a nice backdrop of sunflowers that volunteer here every year because if you plant sunflowers once, you'll never ever have to plant them ever again. They just show up. So it'll be really nice. The sunflowers are native. They're a keystone species that benefits native wildlife, and so are all of the plants that I'm going to be filling these containers with. It's going to be a really great little pollinator corner. And something like this is a really wonderful thing to do if you rent or you only have a small patio, small backyard, balcony, because you can still provide key habitat and food sources for wildlife, even if you don't have a yard of your own. Do not underestimate the impact that you can make with just a few native plants on your balcony in a pot or container of some kind, because you will notice that birds and bees and butterflies who are desperate for that food will be paying a visit to your space much more often as soon as you plant these plants. These containers have just been sitting empty, forgotten in a side corner of my yard for some time, so I'm actually going to be just adding a bunch of potting soil to fill them up to the top, since this soil has been sitting without living roots in it for probably 2 or 3 years. Let's just say it will leave something to be desired. So don't mind me, I'm just gonna get some fresh potting soil into all of these bins. So ideally, in a permaculture sort of situation, we would be composting and have a completely closed loop system when it comes to the soil that we use on our property. And we wouldn't need to bring in bagged soil at all. But I live in a small urban property. Most of you watching probably also live in small urban properties, and having completely closed loop systems right away isn't a realistic expectation. If you can, try to get an organic and locally made potting soil or raised bed mix rather than a big box store brand name that may contain chemicals, unwanted ingredients, or just be 6 months to a year old already. But at the end of the day, we got to use what we have to get these plants in the dirt, and it's going to be a net positive ecologically. So if you live anywhere really like west of the Mississippi, the Great Plains, northwestern forested mountains, cold deserts, even the West Coast, there are amazing native grasses you can use. Of course, look up to make sure that they're native to you. In this case, these are blue grama grasses. Little blue stem's a good one, big blue stem. There are switch grasses, rye grasses, and so on. Okay, so I think I'm gonna do the yarrow as like the centerpiece here in the corner. And then I'm gonna do a penstemon as one centerpiece. And these 2 asters, since they're a little smaller than the yarrow and penstemon, they're still gonna get quite large. These will be completely full when the time comes, but I think that will look really nice. We're gonna do the 2 asters there, and then I'm going to put a blue grama grass in each, because native grasses are an incredible food source and shelter source for wildlife. Obviously, this is really small square footage that we're planting in, so you don't necessarily need to lay everything out by setting the pots on the soil. It is just a habit of mine from doing landscape installs so that I know that everything looks the way that I want it to look. This can help you kind of play around and switch things up if you like before you start digging holes and sticking stuff in the dirt. Once I get down there past the potting soil, like the dirt it has like a ton of organic matter from like the previous herbs, and I grew sunflowers in here at one point. Obviously, no need to do that this year. I grew oregano in here at one point that lived a couple of years before it eventually died back. I go through phases of staying on top of watering these containers versus completely neglecting them versus strategically placing them somewhere that I know my microspray irrigation will actually get it. So that's why I'm putting them here, because these microsprays spill out this way a little bit and they'll be able to catch some of the microsprays when that sprinkler goes on. Pretty standard and basic here. I've taken the aster out of the pot and broken some of the roots. You can see this is a really healthy aster. It's not root bound at all, and it's just going right in the soil down to about the base of the plant. Easy peasy, no big deal. Gorgeous. Now, as of right now, this blue grandma looks a lot bigger than these asters. But when the time comes, this blue grandma is gonna stay at about 12 to 16 inches tall, and these are gonna get up to 3 feet tall. So I am planting the asters towards the back and the blue grandma towards the front. Looks a little counterintuitive now, but in a couple of months, it's gonna make a lot more sense. I say I'm always gonna use trowels, and then I end up just shoving my whole arms into the dirt every single time. Very on brand of me. This guy's a little more root bound. Look at that. We don't love. We're gonna break that up. Poor little guy, you needed us. Woo! You wonder why I always have my face covered in dirt. This is why. I'm so glad we came to your rescue. You were just languishing at the nursery, man. Justice for Aster. Gorge, gorge, and right in the front, I'm gonna post the blue grandma. I'm not worried about these guys being pretty close together. It's going to fill in. These guys are gonna have room to kind of spill out this direction and this direction as well. So I'm not worried that these are less than a foot apart from each other because they have all of this space to hang out. And this is meant to be a really lush, densely planted little corner. The less soil is exposed, the less I have to remember to water it anyway. Okay. Wow, root bound, not great. Poor soul. There we go. That's better. That's a lot better. In you go. Easy peasy. It looks a little silly how big this guy is versus the aster, but I promise, check back in 2 months. It's gonna look totally different. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. All right. Since this is a collection of 3 plants that are gonna be kind of forming a corner, I'm gonna do the little blue stem, a little more on this side, tilt that guy like that, and then this guy's gonna be front and center. That's what's gonna happen. Okay, I almost filled these beds too much. Doesn't matter, I mean, the organic matter in this potting soil is just gonna break down and become more soil, and it's all gonna shrink and erode and stuff anyway, but whoop, there's a spider. Hello, little spider friend. Don't mind me, continue on as you were, sir and or madam. I have a feeling this guy's mega root bound. Yep, it's okay, spider. You're fine, you can stay there. Grass. Yarrow just right behind that. Yarrow's gonna grow up nice and big. They're all perennial. Hopefully they come back again and again. Both blue grandma grass and yarrow are really cold tolerant as well as heat and drought tolerant. So I have a feeling they're gonna be really resilient in this bed. But of course, when you plant something in a container and not in the ground, you run the risk of things really freezing and just in general lasting not as long as if you plant it directly in the soil. However, because yarrow and blue grandma are so resilient, I have high hopes that these will last a decade, at least 5 years, something like that. Very root bound again with the yarrow. We really came in clutch to rescue these poor babies from the nursery. So I'm planting species that are native to the Rocky Mountain region, specifically the cold desert ecoregion 10.1 on the EPA's list of ecoregions. And something I really want to stress is that if you want to plant your garden, your yard, your landscape, a couple of containers, whatever, if you want to plant it ecologically, paying attention to ecoregion and finding plants that are native to that ecoregion is so much more important than your growing zone. One of the questions that I get asked most frequently in my Instagram DMs or TikTok DMs, for example, is what should I plant for zone 6? What should I plant for zone 5 or zone 7? And I always ask, what's your ecoregion? Or if you don't know what that is, what's your zip code? And I'll tell you, because the concept of garden zones, it's agricultural. It's basically the average of the lowest temp that you get in winter, so that you won't plant perennials, for example, fruit trees, for example, that won't survive the winters in your region. But if you are planting plants that are native to your ecoregion, the zone doesn't matter because it's native to where you are, so of course it's going to survive the winter. I I live in Utah, and the jury's kind of out if we're a 6B or a 7A or a 7B because of the way that the climate is changing recently. But there are zone 7s in Europe, there are zone 7s in Africa, there are zone 7s in South America. And yes, I could plant plants from those regions that are hardy down to zone 7 and still have those things thrive in my garden. But I want to be planting 80, 90, 100% native plants anyway. So for me, garden zones are kind of irrelevant. All of that being said, let me step down off my soapbox for a second to just say that the plants that I'm planting are native to the 10.1 ecoregion, which is North American cold deserts, and specifically the Rocky Mountain region. So we have yarrow, blue grama, and asters, as well as one penstemon, which I will be planting shortly. If you live in a different ecoregion, these are not the plants that you should plant. Maybe there's some crossover, but you need to check it out online to make sure. What I'd recommend you'd search are ecoregions. You can find the EPA's website with a map, figure out where your ecoregion is. Then you can just Google plants native to my ecoregion and lists will come right up. And then we're gonna do this guy on this side and the penstemon right there. Oh, nightmare. Nightmare. We're fixing it. It's fine. Shh, it's okay. It's gonna be all right. Stay with me, baby girl. It's gonna be okay. So if you can see, there's something that just landed on the nursery pot while it was growing. This nursery that we source from grows all of their plants outdoors, so weed seeds travel by air. So we're just going ahead and taking care of some of that so that we're not introducing invasive species to our cute little container garden. Great, gorgeous, beautiful. This may look a little empty now, but literally 30 days from now, most of the soil is not going to be visible anymore. And then by the end of the season, these are going to be completely full with these larger perennials at about 3 feet and these at about 16 inches tall. It's going to be gorgeous.